Hi, guys. So, we are trying something new today. We are going to do this lecture online here in Edpuzzle instead of doing it in person. So, we'll see how this goes. So, I'm going to introduce a new concept to you that we're going to be working with over the next couple of weeks. And that is going to be the idea of wonders of the world. That's wonders of the world. So, what are wonders of the world? Well, wonders of the world are huge building projects, and they have been built by cultures all over the world. So, think of these as big, expensive buildings that cultures build basically to show off. Sometimes they're built for defense. A good example of this would be the Great Wall here in China. Sometimes they're built for entertainment, like the Colosseum here in Rome. And sometimes they have religious significance, like the Cristo de Redentor here in Brazil. But either way, they're going to be big projects that are built by cultures all over the world. So, the idea of the seven wonders of the world was actually invented by a guy named Herodotus, and he was a Greek historian. And what he did is he made a list of seven places that he thought all Greek people, if they could afford it, should visit. So these were places and buildings that he thought were really, really special, that everyone who had the chance should go visit. So we're actually going to kind of go through his list here a little bit. So the first thing on his list was a giant statue called the Colossus of Rhodes. Think of this almost like the Statue of Liberty. It was a big bronze statue, and it was big enough that ships could actually sail under it on their way into the harbor of Rhodes. So, as merchants were coming to Rhodes, they would see this huge statue, and they would then actually sail under it to get into the city. So it would have been a really, really impressive thing. It didn't last very long. An earthquake destroyed it actually about 70 years after it was built. Okay, our next one, the Great Pyramid of Giza, I hope you guys recognize. This is actually the only one that is still standing of Herodotus's list. And the Great Pyramid of Giza was so special in part just because it's huge. This was actually the tallest structure in the world for almost 6,000 years. It didn't get past or surpassed until the Eiffel Tower was built in Paris in the 19th century. And this was built in the 3rd century BCE. So this is a really, really old building. And again, it's basically just huge, and it's a very, very impressive structure built by the ancient Egyptians. But hopefully, you guys already know a little bit about that. Our next one, guys, is going to be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So, Babylon is a place that we've heard about before in social studies. This is where Hammurabi wrote his famous code. There's some debate by historians as to whether this building ever actually existed. It may have just been a fiction that Herodotus invented. But if it did exist, it was a really cool place. It was basically like a garden in the sky. So it was a big, tall building that the Babylonians planted trees and bushes and flowers all over to create a garden that the sort of elite people, the rich people of Babylon, could wander around and appreciate and admire. So that would have been a really cool place as well. Couple other examples here for you from that list. We have the statue of Zeus. Now, the statue of Zeus was built by the ancient Greeks, and it was built out of gold and ivory. So things like his robe here, for example, or the top of his staff, or the statue of the goddess of victory, Nike, on his right hand, those would have been made out of gold. And then the rest of his body, the sort of paler white parts, were all made out of ivory. So this would have been a huge statue, and it would have been very, very impressive with all of those unique materials. And you can see these sort of tiny people standing underneath it here. It was an absolutely huge statue. Over here, we have the Lighthouse of Alexandria. This was a big building built in Egypt. It would have been on the coast of Egypt, and it was actually a working lighthouse. So it had a big flame, it had a big light there at the very top to help ships navigate into the harbor of Alexandria, which is a very, very important shipping harbor in Egypt. Here we have the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. This is another building in ancient Greece. This actually was a tomb. Mausoleum is another word for a tomb. There was a king actually who was buried here, and Herodotus put this on the list again because it is such a beautiful building, and it would have been a large, very, very cool structure. Okay, our last one here is the Temple of Artemis. So this is another Greek temple, and again, would have been a very, very impressive structure. It was painted with really, really bright colors. The ancient Greeks really like to use bright colors in their buildings. You can see this bright blue background here, these big, beautiful columns of the temple, and then they would have had paintings on the base of those as well. Looks very similar to the Parthenon, which is another temple built by the ancient Greeks in Athens, but this is a different building. And Herodotus, for whatever reason, liked this one better, so he put it on his list. Now, there is a little bit of a problem with Herodotus's list, and you can kind of see it here. So, of the seven, four of them, these four right here, were all in ancient Greece. So, they were all in ancient Greece. Two of them were in Egypt, and then one that may have not even existed, that's the Hanging Gardens, would have been over here in Babylon. Okay. Now that's a little weird, right? We got this whole big world all around here, and yet Herodotus focuses on this little area right here for his seven wonders of the world. Now that kind of makes sense. Herodotus was an ancient Greek. He couldn't really travel all that far. We didn't have planes yet, so we couldn't go to the airport and fly anywhere in the world just yet. And so he had to work with what he knew, and what he knew of the world was this little tiny part right here. But there were cool wonders of the world all over the rest of the world. So, for example, the Chichen Itza over here was a beautiful pyramid built by the ancient Mayans in what is now Mexico, right? And that's a long way from ancient Greece. Down here, we have Machu Picchu, which was a beautiful city built up on the top of a mountain by the ancient Inca in what is now Peru. Then over here in Cambodia, we have this beautiful temple called the Angkor Wat. It's a Buddhist temple, so much bigger than any of the temples that Herodotus knew of in Greece. Okay, and of course we have the Great Wall of China, which you can actually see from space if you zoom in close enough, which is, again, one of the biggest structures in the world. And none of these made the Herodotus's list, right? And the reason for that, of course, is that he didn't know that they existed, but they are still really, really important wonders of the world. And when I say these were built by cultures all over, I mean that, okay? So I just wanted you guys to see that a little bit. We are still building wonders of the world. So really, these are built all over the world. They are how cultures show off. They are huge, expensive projects, and we still build them. So this is a good example here. This is the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world even today. This is the Cristo Redentor down in Brazil. This was built in the 1930s. And then the example I had for the United States for us here is Disney World. That's a huge place. That's Epcot Center there. And people come from all over the world to visit it. So in my mind, that counts as a wonder of the world too. Okay, we are going to be starting a project going into next week with Wonders of the World, and I want to just talk about that briefly. We will start that next week. You're going to research a wonder of the world that would have been built before 1800. Okay, so Disney World's not going to count, okay, because that was built way after 1800, but anything built before then is going to count for this project. So just pick something you're interested in. I will give you a list before the actual project comes around. And what your group is going to do is you're going to give us a sales pitch about why we should visit the wonder that you choose. So whatever wonder you want to choose here, what I want you to do is give us a sales pitch as to why we should visit your wonder. And the reason we're doing that, guys, is that it's going to use your argument skills. You're going to have to make an argument to sell us on the wonder of the world that you choose. And you're also going to need to do some research, right? You need evidence for this. So that's going to require you to write an argument. Okay, and what you're going to do ultimately, you're going to make a flyer and a presentation about your wonder of the world, giving us your sales pitch. And real quick here, guys, this is really cool. what we're going to do with Miss Clendenning, you guys are also going to build a model of your Wonder of the World in engineering tech. So we are really excited about this, guys. And we're going to be starting that next week. So